بكم في الدارين آمين. For example, if non-scented.
So now we will enter into Muqaddimah Hadramiyyah. For those any who have the notes, you can refer any to the notes any that we gave. And also for those any who doesn't have any the notes, I posted in my Facebook last week so many of the pages, and you can refer to that inshallah. Ayo, bismillah.
For example, if non-scented rose water were to get mixed with pure water, then an intermediary estimation will be used as a benchmark.
Continue.
And example, its status as mutlaq is not affected by changes that is caused by being left for a long period of time by soil, moist, and changes that are affected by its container, place where the water is stored.
Now, last week we spoke about we have entered into the chapter of Tahara, and last week we spoke about these types of water. So I mentioned there are 4 types. We have Ma al-Mutlaq, we have Musta'mal, we have Mutanajjis, and then we have Mushammas. And Mutlaq, it is water that is pure and can purify. Musta'mal, and is water that is pure but cannot purify. And then we have Mutanajjis. Mutanajjis, and it is water that is not pure and cannot purify. And then we have Mushammas. Mushammas, and it is pure water. It is water that is pure and can purify, but it is makruh for us to use it. And then we spoke about the definition of Tahara. We spoke about Hadath. What is the meaning of Hadath? A ritual and impurity. We have Hadathul Asghar and Hadathul Akbar. We have the minor Hadath, minor ritual and impurity. And then we have the major ritual impurity. And then after that, we spoke about changes of the characteristics of water. That if you have Ma'ul Mutlaq, and then something that is pure is added to it, if the characteristics of either the smell or the taste or the color changes, if the change is drastic, then the water is not any mutlaq. So here when we speak about water that mixed with something that is pure, we speak about whether the change is drastic or not drastic. Why? Because if the change is not any drastic, we still consider the water to be mutlaq. Meaning it is permissible for you to use the water for minor or major ritual impurity, meaning to lift minor or major ritual impurity, meaning to take any ablution, for example, or to bathe the obligatory bath. It is permissible for you to use the water, even though there is a slight change. So when it comes to something pure that is added to water that is mutlaq, if it is something that is slight change, then it is forgiven. We still consider it to be mutlaq. But if the change is drastic to such an extent that it you cannot name it water anymore, so now it carries the ruling of musta'mal. The rulings of musta'mal, meaning it is pure by itself but it cannot purify. It is pure by itself and it cannot purify. So for example, if you have a cup of water and you pour, for example, coffee, this is the example I gave last week, the water becomes black in color. If the water becomes black, this is not mutlaq anymore, because one of the characteristics, that is the color of the water has changed. So now it is not any mutlaq, but it is muqayyad. And the opposite of mutlaq, it is muqayyad. Mutlaq, I think I mentioned also last week, that it is not tied to anything. Meaning, if a person asks you what is this, you say this is water. This is not tied to anything. But the moment you pour in coffee inside, it becomes black. Now it becomes coffee water. It becomes any coffee water. So now it is tied into something else. This is the meaning of muqayyad. But when it comes to water itself, and when you say this is any water, this is mutlaq. The meaning of mutlaq in Arabic language, meaning it is not tied into anything. So as long as you can name it as water, it is mutlaq. But the moment the characteristics change, it is no longer mutlaq. It carries the ruling of musta'mal. We don't say it's musta'mal, but it carries the ruling of musta'mal. Ruling of musta'mal meaning it is pure but it cannot purify. This is the meaning of ruling ruling any of musta'mal. So there is a difference any between water that is musta'mal and water that carry the ruling any of musta'mal. So we say this al-ma'ul mutaghayyir, water any that change. So when it change, a drastic any change, then it is not considered to be mutlaq. And then last week we spoke about non-scented rose water. This is what the author says. Non-scented any rose water. We spoke about this as a revision. If non-scented any rose water, meaning if you have any rose water which does not have any smell, no taste, no color, and it fell into a cup, for example, it fell into this cup. Now we have to make an estimation. We have to make an estimation. Is this particular water that is mixed with the non-scented any rose water, does it make the water still mutlaq or not mutlaq? It depends how much amount of the non-scented rose water that fell into this cup. And since it doesn't have any what you call it, smell, doesn't have any taste, doesn't have any color, then we have to make an estimation. Then we have to estimate if juice fell into this cup in replace of the non-scented rose water. For example, if you say 10 ml of non-scented rose water fell into this cup, but since it doesn't have any characteristics that change water that you cannot see with your eyes, then when you make estimation, and we say that if juice 10 ml of juice fell into this particular water, will it cause any drastic change or does not cause a drastic change? So for example, if we say orange juice, for example 10 ml enters into this cup, it will cause a drastic change, meaning the color from a clear water and it becomes yellowish, for example. Then we say that the water is not mutlaq anymore. So this is the meaning of estimation. We give an estimation. And when it comes to pure things, we say this is an estimation with minor. It is considered to be a minor estimation. If it is
and
its status.
Its status as mutlaq is not affected by changes that is caused by being left for a long period of time by soil, moist, and changes that are affected by its container, place where the water is stored, or through the medium where it flows.
So now when he said the status as mutlaq is not affected by changes that is caused by being left for long period of time. First thing, he said wala yaduru taghayyurun yasir, meaning that if it is a slight change, does not cause any effect. If it is a slight change, for example, I have this cup of water and one drop for example 5 drops of orange juice fell into this. There is some yellowish, and you can see some yellowish, but it is light. This is no problem. It's forgiven. It is still considered to be mutlaq. Because why? Because it does not make the water lose its characteristic. Meaning, although there is any slight change, but if we ask what is this, we can still say it is water. Because the changes is something that is that is slight. Something that is slight. So this is what the author mentioned, and there is a mistake here, I believe, because the translation is actually okay. Just take note for you who have the notes. Just take note for you who have the notes. The translation for this one, wala yaduru taghayyurun yasirun la yamna'u ismal ma, is actually below. So can you read the below one? And it,
example, the status as mutlaq is not affected by changes to the water that is caused by insoluble such as wood, oil, sea salt, and leaf falling from tree.
Yeah, this is correct. This is correct. But that means this is not mentioned. This is not mentioned. Yeah. Okay, just take note for those who have the notes. Now we go back. Wala yaduru taghayyurun yasirun la yamna'u ismal ma. So those who have the notes, and you write this down. A slight change will not cause any effect, as long as it does not change the status any of water. Can we write this down? A slight change does not give any effect as long as it does not change the status of water. This is what I mentioned earlier. 5 drops any of orange juice fell into this cup. Slight change. So it does not change the status of water. Meaning if you ask, what is this? People then will say, this is water. But imagine if the water changes color, meaning change into yellowish in color, for example. When people are asked, what is this? So you cannot say this is water anymore, because why? Now it is orange in color. So we say this is a juice, or this is a cordial, for example, because it is one and the other characteristics and it has changed. Aywa. So I hope it is clear, inshallah.
Chapter on offensive water.
No, we have not finished it. And then after that, and he mentioned la bi mujawirin ka'udin wa duhnin, and the status as mutlaq is not affected by the changes that is caused by insolubles, such as wood, oil, sea salt, or leaves falling from trees. So now we have this thing that we what you call it? If something falls into water, sometimes it mixes with water, sometimes it does not mix with water. It depends. For example, if you put wood inside water, it does not mix with the water. In Arabic, we call it mujawir. This is mujawir. But there are other things that fell into water, it mixes with the water. For example, if I put any sugar inside, this is water, this is mutlaq, and I put any sugar inside. Now this is mukhalit. In Arabic, we call it mukhalit. Why? Because it dissolves with water. Something that dissolves with water. So if something that can dissolve with water, something that can dissolve with water, if the change is drastic, then we say this is no longer mutlaq. But if it is a slight change, we say it is still mutlaq. But when it comes to things that does not mix with water, just like wood, oil, as what he mentioned here, this does not cause any effect. Because why? It does not mix with the water. And then he mentioned also, it is not affected by changes that is caused by being left for a long period of time. Before this, only thing the Arabic part is not inserted. He said that if the changes is caused by being left for a long period of time, and for example, if you have a pail of water that is placed, for example, for a few months, and then after some time the taste of the water change, the color, there is a slight change, for example, this is forgiven. Because why? This is a change due to the container itself. Meaning after a long period of time, the changes that happens in the water, this is something that is forgiven. Likewise, when there is moss is tohlub. When there is algae, for example, you put water in a pail, in a big pail of water, you leave it for a few months. After some time, there will be algae. Correct or not? There will be algae, there will be moss. This does not give any effect to the water, meaning the water is still mutlaq. Although there are changes in the characteristics of the water that are affected by the container, place where the water is stored, or through the medium where it flows. For example, if the water flows in like a piping, and then after some time there is some changes in the color of the water, changes in the taste of the water because of the piping. Like nowadays, for example, our home dissolve with water. So when it comes to wood, when it comes to oil, when it comes to sea salt, and here he mentioned sea salt, it does not change the status of the water. It does not change the status of, and it is water that is less than 2 qullah, meaning it is water that is small amount, and not any more than 2 qullah, because more than 2 qullah, it doesn't becomes what you call it, will not be affected by change unless the change is drastic. But when it comes to small amount of water, if it is something that is pure, it is the same thing. And if we say if the change is drastic, it is not considered to be mutlaq. But if a field fell into the water that is less than 2 qullah, automatically it becomes any mutanajis, even though there are no changes. Even though there are no changes in the characteristics of the water. And then we speak about estimated change when pertaining to the non-scented rose water. And then we speak about situations that are forgiven, just like any water that is left for many months. There is algae, there is moss, and what the pipings that the water flows. If there are slight changes into the water, it is forgiven. If it is because of those pipings. Likewise, if the thing that enters into the water does not mix any of the water, this is also does not give any effect to the water. This is the meaning of mujawir. But when it comes to things that can mix with water, then it can change the status of the water, meaning the water does not become mutlaq if what you call it, the change is a drastic one. So I hope it is clear, inshallah. If anyone has any question, inshallah, at the end of our lesson, we will take any questions from you. Those who are watching from Facebook, also you can ask any question in the comment section. I can read the comment, and if you write in the comments in the session, you can type now or later, no problem. If there are questions, we can take any of your questions. Also, when it comes to the what you call it, this WhatsApp group also, if there are any questions, you can write down the questions. So now we will enter on the next part, which he mentioned on offensive water. Offensive meaning water that is makruh. Water that is makruh. Now continue.
Chapter on offensive water. It is offensive to purify oneself using water that is too hot or too cold. It is offensive to purify oneself using mushammas water that is exposed to the sun rays in a hot region.
Now, first thing he mentioned, it is offensive to purify oneself using water that is too hot or too cold. It is not, it is makruh. Makruh meaning it is something that is disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you leave it to attain for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you be rewarded. Not performing an act of makruh for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person will attain rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if a person does this act which is makruh, it is not a sin, but this particular action is disliked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this basically the meaning of makruh, offensive. So he said, using water that is too hot and too cold. For example, water that is too hot. A person just boil water, and then after that he takes any ablution with the water. We say this is makruh. Why? Because it can harm. It can harm. Video start? Allahu alam. I think should be okay. Yeah. No, you look at the Facebook. If maybe you can open and see. There's someone commented that the video that there is some lagging. Wallahu alam.
Okay.
I don't think so. Sometimes any lagging, maybe your phone maybe has your internet connection might be weak. Wallahu alam. Now when we go back to what we mentioned, using any water that is too hot or too cold. Why it is makruh? Because it can harm you. It can cause any harm. But if it causes any severe harm, it can become haram. And for example, if a person use boiling water, and when he use any boiling water, the boiling water and it cause harm to his face, the face and it becomes scalded. Now this is not makruh. He said this is haram. Why? Because it cause any damage to the skin. But when it comes to makruh, meaning it is hot in a sense, and it will cause slight harm. This is what we say makruh. But when it causes any severe harm, it is considered to be haram. Likewise, when a person use water that is too cold, and he can fall sick. For example, if a person in winter, for example, he doesn't have the heater and he's not working, it is makruh for him to use any water if he knows that the water is too cold, that can harm him. It is offensive to purify oneself using mushammas water. Mushammas, and as what I mentioned last week, mushammas is water that is placed under the hot sun, in a hot weather, and in a hot country, and in a container that is metallic. These are the conditions pertaining to mushammas. Yani there must be hot weather, hot country, and the water is placed in a metallic container. Not if other than metallic, for example, if it is placed in a wood container, this is not any mushammas. So these are some of the condition. If a person use any water of this nature to the skin, some of our scholars mention this is makruh because it can cause harm to the skin. It is mentioned there are some chemical reaction that happens, that when water is exactly under the sun, and if it's too hot, it can cause some chemical reaction, and this can cause harm on your skin. But there are differences amongst our ulama. Some of ulama mentioned that it's not the case, that it doesn't cause any harm to the skin. So we have some differences pertaining to mushammas. Some of scholars mention it's makruh. Some of scholars mention it's not makruh. Because why some scholars they say that it's not makruh, meaning they say there is no harm. There is no harm to use that kind of water. But when it comes to our country, as far as our country is concerned, Singapore is not considered to be a hot country. So there is no such thing as mushammas in Singapore. Please take note. Then if a person living in Singapore say mushammas in water, you tell him that this is not applicable to our country. Why? Our country is not considered to be a hot country. Being in a hot country is one of the conditions of mushammas. It's one of the conditions of mushammas. Hot country meaning places that the summer in the hot weather reaches to a state where the heat becomes intense. Our country like Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, we are near the equator, so we are not considered to be a country that is too hot or too cold during our winter, because we do not have any winter, and we do not have any summer. The whole year is about the same temperature. But when comes, if you stay in Yemen, for example, or in the Hijaz during the summertime, where the temperature goes up more than 40 degrees Celsius, and this is a thing we do not experience in our country. In Singapore, mostly how many? 30 plus, correct or not? Mostly 30 plus. It never goes out all the way to 40 plus. Some countries in the Middle East, 50 plus. Imagine, 50 plus degrees Celsius. So we cannot imagine how hot that situation can be. Then in this case there is mushammas, and if a person places any water under the hot sun in this weather, in this situation, then there is any mushammas. So that is why he mentioned in a hot region. So our country is not considered to be a hot region, as what I mentioned. In a metal container, other than the metal container, it is not any mushammas. And if a person places water in a wooden container, this is not any mushammas, even though he places under the hot sun for hours. It is offensive and need to be used on the body. So even if we say, for example, this is mushammas, meaning all the conditions of mushammas are there. You are in a hot country and during the hot weather, not in winter, meaning you are in the hot and summer, and it is in a metallic container, and you are placing it under the sun. Even so, what is makruh here? Makruh if you use the water on your body. But if you use the water, for example, to water the plants, or use the water for something else, and it is not makruh. So the reason why it is makruh, because it causes harm to the body, causes harm to the skin. Otherwise, it is not considered to be makruh. It is offensive to be used on the body, but not offensive on clothes. And a person use any mushammas, to wash the clothes, no problem. It is no longer offensive when the water is cool. Then after some time, it becomes cold. Correct? No? It becomes cool. For example, night time. Earlier, the whole day it is under the hot sun. But when it becomes cold, now it's not offensive anymore, because now there is no harm. There is no harm. So this is basically the meaning of mushammas. Aywa. So I hope everything is clear, inshallah. Aywa. Continue.
Chapter on water used for purification, musta'mal. It is not valid to purify oneself using a small quantity of musta'mal water two. Number one, leave the state of impurity, and number two, remove filth.
Now, the author he mentioned that it is not permissible for us to use water to do two main things. Number one, to leave the state of impurity, and number two, to remove filth. First thing, we have to understand what is musta'mal. What is water that is musta'mal? Musta'mal, when we say musta'mal in fiqh, it is water that is used to remove water that has been already used to remove a ritual state of impurity, whether we are speaking about minor or major. For example, if I have any this water, for example, and I wash my face with the intention of wudu, yani to take ablution, and I use this to take ablution, wudu. So when the water is separated from my face, this water is musta'mal. So now what we can understand here is this particular water is used to remove the ritual impurity that is on my face. Correct or not? So now I'm using this water to wash my face. So when the water washes my face, when it goes out of the boundaries of my face, when it fall, this water is considered to be musta'mal. So I hope all of us, inshallah, understand this very well. Water that is musta'mal, meaning water that is used to lift a minor or major state of impurity. This is the meaning of musta'mal. So we cannot be saying musta'mal is used water, just like that. Used water meaning water that is used to wash the clothes, water that is used for example to wash something else. This is not any musta'mal. So the meaning of musta'mal in fiqh, it is water that is used to lift a minor or major impurity. So I hope it is clear. So now, if I have water that is musta'mal, meaning now, for example, I use this water to wash my face in wudu, and I collect the water, meaning I put a pail below me, and I wash my face, I collect back the water. Understand? So this is musta'mal or not musta'mal? This is musta'mal. Why? Because this is wajib. I have used this water to remove the ritual impurity, remove the minor ritual impurity from my face. So I cannot reuse that water. Because it is musta'mal. I cannot use it to lift another state of ritual and impurity or to remove a filth. Because why? Because water that is musta'mal, it is pure, but it cannot purify. It is pure, meaning it is not najis, but I cannot use it to lift another state of ritual impurity, and I cannot use it to cleanse myself from filth. I cannot use the water for istinja, for example. It is not valid. The istinja will not be valid. Because why? It cannot purify. Water that is musta'mal, it is pure, but it cannot purify. I hope it is clear, inshallah. Now, continue.
If one, whilst taking ablution, put his hand into a small quantity of water, example pail, after washing his face without making the intention of using his hand as a scoop, then the remaining water become musta'mal.
So now the author mentioned that if a person is taking ablution from a pail of water, and then after he washes his face, and he wants to wash his hands, if he does not make the intention of scooping, meaning using his hand as a scoop, and he places the water, his hand in the water, now the water becomes musta'mal. Because why? Because now the water has been used to remove the minor ritual impurity that is in the hands. That is in the hands. And the fact that he does not make this intention of istighraf. And in Madhab Imam Shafi, and we have this term, niyatul istighraf. Niyatul istighraf, meaning you make the intention that your water is used, that your hands is used as a scoop. Is used as a scoop. This is the meaning of the intention of istighraf. If you do not make this intention, and automatically you put your hands in the water, once you remove it, the water becomes musta'mal. Clear, inshallah? If someone, while taking ablution, puts his hand into a small quantity of water, why he mentioned small quantity of water? Because the ruling differs between a small quantity of water and a big quantity of water. A big quantity of water, it doesn't become musta'mal. Because why? It is more than 2 qullah. It does not become any musta'mal. Musta'mal can only occur if the water is small any quantity. If the water is small in quantity. And you put in your hand without making this intention. And this is the time for you to wash any your hands. After any washing any of the face, when it comes into the washing any of the hands, now you must make the intention of istighraf. But when you are washing any your face, there is no need for you to make the intention of istighraf. What is the reason? The reason is, when you are taking any water to wash any your face, now you are going to wash the face, meaning to remove the ritual impurities on the face, not on the hands. Because tertib is wajib in ablution. So when it comes into the washing of the face, if you place your hand in water, it doesn't make the water musta'mal. When does the water becomes musta'mal? At the point of washing the hands. And now if you want to put your hands into the pail of water, it is small amount of water, now you must make the intention of istighraf. If you don't make the intention, and you place your hands in the water, and you take out your hand, now it becomes any musta'mal. Aywa. So he said, without making the intention of using his hand as a scoop, then the remaining water becomes musta'mal. Then the remaining water becomes any musta'mal. And for those who have questions, and you can ask, inshallah. If at this there is anyone who doesn't understand, inshallah, and you can ask, inshallah, later. No problem. Now, if anyone doesn't understand, I will continue.
It is permissible to use musta'mal water for recommended sunnah purification, such as washing for the second and the third time in ablution.
Now, he said that it is permissible to use the musta'mal water for recommended purification. Recommended purification, such as washing for the second and third time in ablution. So now, for example, I have this water, and then I wash my face. I wash my face with the intention of lifting a ritual impurity, minor ritual impurity. And I collect the water. Correct, not? I collect the water. And then I use the water, to do the second washing, the second time. Now, this does not give effect to the ablution. Because why? Because the first time I use water that is mutlaq. The second time I use musta'mal. No issue. The third time also I use musta'mal. No issue. Because why? The minor ritual impurity, the hadas that is on the face, and it has been lifted. Now, so this is why he said it is permissible to use musta'mal water for recommended purification, and for sunnah purification. He gave the example of the second time of washing in ablution and the third time of washing in ablution. Because what is wajib in ablution is the first washing. It is the first washing. So the first time it must be mutlaq. Correct, no? But once the hadas has been lifted, then khalas, it is valid. You can use for the second and for the third time. Aywa.
Chapter on water mixed with filth, mutanajjis, and its like.
So now we are going to speak about the third type of water. So first we spoke about mutlaq, a water that is pure, that can purify. And then we spoke about musta'mal. Musta'mal is water that is used to lift a ritual impurity, and water that is used to to wash off a filth with conditions. This can be musta'mal on certain situations. Later on, inshallah, the author will speak about this. The third type of water is mutanajjis. Mushammas also we spoke. Correct? Mushammas the author spoke. So now is the time to speak about water that is mutanajjis. Aywa.
Small amount of water and other liquids become impure if filth were to mix with them.
Now, small amounts of water. So now we have to understand. For those who have studied the kitabs Safinatun Najah, the first thing, in the chapter of Tahara, the author speaks about what is the meaning of small amount of water and large amount of water. So now let me explain. For those who are not aware about this difference, in fiqh, when we say small amount of water, it means anything that is less than 2 qullah. So this is the thing you have to understand. When we say small amount of water in fiqh, it doesn't mean small amount of water like this. it means anything that is less than 2 qullah. Type 2 qullah, yani how much is it? It's about 220 liters. 220 liters. Anything that is below 220 liters, small amount. So even if you say, for example, I have a big pail of water, this is small amount. Usually people, if you have a big pail of water, logically people say this large amount, correct or not? This large amount of water. But in fact, we say this is a small amount. Anything that is less than 2 qullah. Why 2 qullah? Because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, which is sahih, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, إِذَا بَلَغَ الْمَاءُ قُلَّتَيْن. If the water reach 2 qullah, lam yahmilil khabas, that it will not carry filth. So our scholars mentioned what is in the meaning of 2 qullah. Al-Imam Shafi'i does the ijtihad, Al-Imam Abu Hanifa does ijtihad. There are certain differences amongst the madhahib pertaining to the 2 qullah. But Al-Imam Shafi'i mentioned, as what we mentioned, is about 220 liters. But pertaining to the Hanafites, the Madhab Imam Abu Hanifa, they are more. When they speak about 2 qullah, they speak about a big, large pool of water, that if you shake one end of the pool of water, the other end does not move. This is a thing they say when it comes into the 2 qullah. So it is a bit complicated, correct or not? But as far as our mazhab is concerned, mashallah, later on the author will speak more about how we want to measure, and we want to come into an understanding as to how we ascertain that this amount of water has reached 2 qullah or not 2 qullah. Now later on he will touch on this. But basically now the author is saying small amounts of water and other liquids becomes impure if filth were to mix with them. Meaning, even if the filth does not cause any change, but since the water is less than 2 qullah, if you put even a small amount of filth, the water becomes mutanajis. Clear, inshallah? So for example, if I have a pail of water and 1 drop of urine fell into the pail of water, even though in terms of the color it doesn't change, in terms of the taste it doesn't change, in terms of the smell it doesn't change, yet we say this is mutanajis. So it's different when you speak about something pure that falls into water or something that is najis. When it comes to pure, even it change the state of the water, but slight change, no problem, correct or not? Because it's pure. For example, sugar fell into water, it caused change, the water becomes sugarish. But as long as the change is not drastic, it does not change the state of the water, meaning you cannot say this is water anymore, it becomes sugar water, then only we say this is not mutlaq. But when it comes to filth, we do not differentiate whether it causes any change or does not cause any change, whether it is a small amount of filth or large amount of filth. Even if it is small amount of filth, the water becomes mutanajis. Aywa. Continue.
Except with these following conditions.
Except with these following conditions. Yani these are the exceptions. Now.
Number 1, the filth which cannot be seen by the naked eye.
Now, the filth that cannot be seen by the naked eye. Yani so small, so small, you cannot see. For example, you have a pail of water, and there are filth that is what you call it, that enters into the water, in the sense that you see the water moves a bit, but you cannot see where are the droplets, correct? No, this is forgiven. This is forgiven. Yani something that cannot be seen by the naked eye, filth that cannot be seen by the naked eye, just like the fly. The fly, for example, it goes into feces of animals, for example, and then after that it fell into water. You know that there are traces of filth, but you cannot see it, correct? Not? You cannot see it. This is also forgiven. Now, continue.
Number 2, carcass which blood does not flow when it is cut unless it changes the state of the water, or if the carcass is thrown intentionally into the water.
Now, number 2 is pertaining to carcass, and in Islam we say all forms of carcass are najis. All forms of carcass are najis except for 3 things. Number 1 is a human body, Number 2 is this locusts or grasshoppers, al-jarad. And number 3, it is the fish. Number 3, and it is the fish. Other than this, all are considered any to be najis. Or we say anything that lives any in the sea. Anything any that lives any in, what do you call it, in water. Whether it is in the sea or in the river. Meaning it only lives any in the water. The carcass any is not considered any to be a filth. But other than that, everything in it is a filth. So now in the author and it speaks any about insects. Insects, small animals, that when you cut any the body, the blood does not flow. These animals or these insects, when it fell into water, it does not make the water mutanajis, even though the carcass in it is a filth. So for example, if a fly any enters into water, and we have the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِذَا وَقَعَ ذُبَابُ فِي إِنَاءِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَلْيَغْمِسْهُ. Yani if a fly any enters into a water, then you have to submerge it. You have to you have to push it in a sense, and it enters into water, and then after that, and you take it out. So our ulama mentioned based on this particular hadith that anything that is like the fly, this is based on qiyas. Anything is like the fly, meaning they come into a state where the characteristics of the fly is an insect that if you cut the body, the blood does not flow. So this becomes the illah. Illah in qiyas. Any form of animals that if you cut the body, the blood does not flow. Now this kind of animals or this kind of insects, it falls into water, even though as a carcass. Although we say carcass is a filth, correct or not? Even it falls into water, even though the water is small amount. Khalas, and we say it is forgiven. So like a fly, including what? Including ants, cockroach, lizard, correct or not? It does not make the water mutanajis. It does not make the water mutanajis. Yani you can remove it and you can use the water for ablution. Now,
number 3, if the
we have the hadith of Zubab, they call it the hadith of Zubab. Hadith of Zubab, the Prophet ﷺ speaks about إذا وقع الذباب في شراب أحدكم, يعني شراب, your cup and your water. وقع الذباب في شراب أحدكم, يعني the fly enters, and imagine enters into this cup. The fly enters into this cup. The Prophet ﷺ taught us what we can do is we push it until it enters into the water, then take it out. Why? Because one of the wings of the fly carries germs, the other one is the antidote. The other one is the antidote. So sometimes when the fly enters into the water, one of the wings, it brings up. So to neutralize the water, here this particular hadith speaks about how to neutralize the water. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that you push the fly in the water, then after that you remove, and you can drink the water. You can drink the water. So here ulama mentioned that it shows that it's not mutanajis. If it is mutanajis, the Prophet, how can the Prophet ﷺ say that you can drink the water even after the fly enters? Correct, no? Now,
number 4, the same applies to number 3, if the mouth of a cat has filth in it, then it disappears, and there is a possibility that it has drunk from a large quantity of water.
Now, for example, if a person has a cat at home, and the cat, for example, has some filth at the mouth. Sometimes a cat, for example, eats this rat, and then rat is najis. Carcass of the rat is najis. So traces of the filth is at the mouth of the cat, and then it disappears. The cat disappears. Then it returns and it drinks from a pail of water. Do we say this pail of water is mutanajis? Because just now when we saw this cat and it ate from the rat, for example, there are traces of filth at the mouth, and then after that it drinks from the pail of water. So if the cat disappears, in a sense that there are possibility that it might drink from other sources of water. There are possibilities. This we can imagine, and if a person stay in a kampung house, for example, there are rivers at the side of the house, or there are other puddles of water, for example, in a rainy day, the cat goes out of the house and then return again, and then it drinks from the small amount of water. Here we can assume that when the cat any disappears, that there is a possibility that it cleanses any itself by drinking any some other water any outside. So we say that this water that has been drank any by the cat is still any considered to be mutlaq and pure. It is not any mutanajis because there is a possibility that it has cleansed in its mouth. But it is different and if you are living in Singapore in a HDB house, for example, wallahu alam. Yani if you see any your cat, for example, eating any from something that is najis, and then after that your cat then disappear. Like where does the cat go? If the cat then goes into the room, for example, and you know in the room and there are no puddles any water, no water that it can cleanse in itself, the mouth from the filth. Now here we cannot be assuming, correct? Because there are no possibilities. There are no possibilities any that the mouth any of the cat any has been cleansed. So here we are speaking about if there is a possibility that the filth any be cleansed, So we have to look at the situation, then we can understand whether this is the same ruling any or not. So I hope any it is clear, inshallah. Now, continue.
Number 4. The same applies to a toddler who has filth on him after which he disappears from sight, and there is a possibility that area has been purified.
Naam, yani number 4 is pertaining yani to a toddler. Yani toddler, yani it's a child any that is that has any this ability any to crawl or to walk and slowly. We see any that there are traces any of filth any on the body, but after that he disappears, and there is a possibility that he might go to the toilet, or there is a possibility that there are other parts any of the house where, for example, there are some water that he can be cleansed any in the sense, and if the filth any is a little, and he can only be cleansed, then we can assume that he is clean. We can assume any that he is clean. Now, again, this is the same thing as the cat earlier. If there is a possibility that he can be cleansed, there is a possibility that he can be cleansed. For example, he's crawling any, for example, if he crawls any into the toilet or he crawls any into some parts any of the house, or outside any of the house any, for example, there are some there is a pool, for example, and there is some puddles any of water, and there is a possibility that the child might crawl any on it, and the filth any has been cleansed, then we assume that there is no najis any on him. Aywa.
Number 5. Small amount of vapors, fumes from the filth.
Now, if you have any filth and then there is some any vapors any that come out any from the filth, like last time any we have this a place any where they burn the filth, yani to process fertilizers, any. Until today, what they do is they take the cow dung, correct not? They take any the cow dung or even the human any feces. They take and they put in a factory, and then after that they heat it up, and then sometimes any vapor and it comes up. You happen to go to the masjid, for example, you pass by any this factory, and then the vapor and it touches you. You smell, you can see any smell in your filth, but there is no essence in your filth, only the smell. This is forgiven. Clear not? This is forgiven. The smell or the vapor is forgiven. Yeah.
Smoke and vapor, does it consist of smoke?
Yeah, smoke and it's same thing. Smoke, vapor, or smell. Now, it is forgiven.
And number 6, a few strands of hair of inedible animals.
Inedible and meaning animals in it that you cannot eat. Animals in it that you cannot eat, the hair is najis if it is separated from the body. But small amount is forgiven. For example, the cat. Is the hair of the cat najis or not najis? Najis. Correct or not? Najis. When it becomes a najis? When it's separated from the cat. But as long as the hair is on the cat, it is not najis. But if it is separated from the cat, it's najis. Small amounts is forgiven. Large amounts, not forgiven. Except for pigs and dogs. Pigs and dogs, even a small amount is not forgiven. Because this is najis mughalladha. This is a major field. Now,
number 7, a small amount of dust from a manure of animals.
Now, this is the same thing as same ruling as number 5 just now. Whether we say it is a filth or it is a manure of animals like cow dung. Cow dung and it is a filth, correct? No, it is a filth. The vapor is the dust or the dust any of this manure. This is also forgiven. The dust. Sometimes any what you call it there. When when people take the cow dung and they they throw and they put on something, then the dust and it will come out, correct or not? The dust. This is also any forgiven. Now,
Number 8. And the dust from a manure of animals does not make the wet body parts filthy.
now even if the body parts any are wet, even if the body parts are wet, a person, for example, goes and he's jogging and he's sweating, and then he passed by the factory of cow dung, and then the dust and it hit him. The dust, this is any forgiven. Even though the dust now mixes any with what? Mixes any with water. Because we have a ruling in fiqh, we say al-jafu bil-jaf la yanjusu bila khilaf. If the field any is dry, no issue, correct or not? But if it is wet, then it becomes any an issue. But here it is forgiven. Here it is forgiven because it's just dust, not the essence. Not the essence any of the field, but the essence any of the field is not forgiven. Unless if it is dry that you can take it away any from your body. Aywa. Then the author mentioned when the quantity of water reaches 2 qullah. This one we mentioned earlier. 2 qullah. I mentioned in the notes. Approximately 219 liters. 219 liters. And it is the meaning of. This is the meaning of 2 qullah. Yani he mentioned when the quantity of water reaches 2 qullah, then it does not become impure when filth falls into it, except if the water changes its state, its taste, color or smell, even if the change any is minor. Now this is if the water reaches 2 qullah and najis fell in filth, even if the change is a slight change, not drastic change, the water becomes mutanajis. The water becomes mutanajis. Earlier, and we mentioned if it is less than 2 qullah, even if there is no change, it becomes mutanajis. But this is when the water reaches 2 qullah. So slight change affect the purity of the water. Wallahu alam any bisawab. So I think we will stop here because of time. So inshallah, we will take in questions inshallah. I believe there are a few questions here. Let me see. We have a question. Salam Ustaz. Can you explain again for the intention of scooping? Must we make the intention every time we want to scoop the water? Or just once? Intention of scooping, as what we mentioned, is at the point when you want to wash your hands. When you want to wash your hands. Because you are putting your hands in the water. So at the point of washing your hands, the sequence you're washing your hands, that is the only time that you need to make the intention of scooping. And the meaning of intention of scooping, meaning you make the intention that your hands is placed in the water as a form of scoop, not to wash, the hands. This is the meaning of the intention of scooping. So it is you are only needed to make this intention at the point of washing your hands, and not at all times. When you want to wash your face, no need for you to make the intention of scooping, because now you are washing your face. So your hands is just something that is used to wash your face. Likewise, when comes to wiping of the head, when comes to the washing of the feet, there is no need for you to make the intention of scooping, because you are not washing your hands. The only time that you must make the intention of scooping is at the point of washing your hands. Salam Ustaz, in the case of taking ablution with water, with a running tap, is it necessary to make the intention of using hand as a scoop? There is no need for you to make intention to use your hand as a scoop if you are taking ablution from running tap water, as what we are doing today in Singapore. Pertaining to making the intention of scooping is only applicable if you are taking ablution from a small amount of water, whether we are speaking about pail or we are speaking about a small pool of water, for example, less than 2 qullah. This is the point that you need to make the intention of scooping, because we are speaking about small amount of water. But when it comes to running tap, then no problem, and no need for you to make the intention of scooping, because you are not putting your hand in the water. The water is flowing to you, so there is no need to make the point of scooping. I hope it is clear, inshallah. What if a drop of musta'mal water drop into a pail of mutlaq water? Does the water consider as still pure, or can use rafal hadath izalatul najas? The question is asking, and if a drop if a drop of musta'mal water, if a drop of musta'mal water drop into a pail of mutlaq water, does the water considered to be pure? The water becomes musta'mal. Now, because water that is musta'mal drops into a pail of water, the pail of water becomes musta'mal. the pail of water and it becomes musta'mal. So you cannot leave hadas and you cannot use it any for istinja to remove the filth. So I believe these are the only questions in the WhatsApp group. In the Facebook. What about our WhatsApp group? There are no questions. So inshallah, if there are no questions, inshallah, we will stop here, and inshallah, in the next week, and we will continue from where we are. For next week, inshallah, just take note, we will read from this part when the quantity of water reaches to قُلَّ ربنا تقبل دعانا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم واختم بصالحات أعمالنا وآجلنا الله يا كريم بفضل سبحان ربك بالعزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين تقبل الله منكم السلام عليكم
Ustaz, tanya sikit.